Okay, so we're going to do an acknowledgement of country. So acknowledge the Yugara and Turrbal people, the traditional owners of the land on which the university is built on. Acknowledge the traditional owners' custodianship of all these lands on which we meet and recognize that sovereignty has never been ceded. We pay our respects to their ancestors and descendants, past, present, and emerging, who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country. We recognize their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. Okay. And so before we start, just a quick advice as well about the presentations. So all advice and comments offered in the presentation don't constitute official advice from the relevant schools and faculties, and courses are subject to change from year to year. So the comments we make and the different information we provide may not be as relevant to this year's, but hopefully you can still apply some of that knowledge that we've gained over the years. And also always remember to consult the ECP if you have any questions about assessment items. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first guest speaker for tonight, Aaron. So Aaron's involved in a range of research projects, graduated from the Bachelor of Biomedical Science undergrad with a GPA 6.96, and pretty crazy, still on a GPA 7 in Med as well. So, and is also a tutor for a bunch of third year, second year courses such as anatomy, so you might see him around the gaff if you're second or third year. So without further ado, let's welcome Aaron.
Thanks guys, really pointing out my 1-6 there. Okay, so today I've been asked to, discuss a bit of my own study strategies with you guys, what I found helped for me, and also, how I've changed my study habits over the years. I've, been a university student for 5 years now, and each year I change it slightly, improving different things, and I'd love to share tonight with you guys what I have found works best. So, overall, with our study, we're trying to improve our learning and our retention for our exams. Today I'm going to try and suggest some new strategies and help you guys reflect on what you've been doing and how you can improve. But most importantly, I want to stress to you guys that you don't need to remain loyal to one specific strategy. So try out different things, employ different techniques, and see what works best for you, because we all learn in different ways. Which leads us to the point that it's always important to constantly critique yourself. So reflect, see what you can improve on, and most importantly, work together, work with your peers. I know a lot of you guys are, aiming to go into medicine afterwards, and it is quite a competitive process, but the best way to get there is together. So make sure you guys work together on your journey. So the first part of this presentation, I'm just going to quickly, go through the different strategies and styles that are available, and then I'm going to spend the bulk on what has worked for me and describe a few different softwares that I've used and has worked, quite well. Okay, so we're going to start with the cognitive strategies. So there are 3 main cognitive strategies that I've found through my research, and if you talk to any of the academic advisors at UQ, they'll explain similar sort of techniques. So the first one is, elaboration, and as the name suggests, you delve further into the topic at hand and you make connections that you did not previously realize. So some examples of this are making analogies, making different stories, and explaining it to your peers. Then we have summarization, so condensing it into your own words. One of the earliest strategies our high school teachers told us, and a great way to do this is by writing questions and answers, and you can also write different summary notes. Some of the things we'll discuss a bit later on. And then the last one is self-explanation. So if you don't have your peers around at home, you can just explain it to yourself, and that's another great way. Then we go into our metacognitive strategy, so that's taking a bit of a zoom out approach. So starting off by planning, so set your goals. I think everyone here has heard of SMART goals, so make your goals, meet each criteria of SAMART, and most importantly, make a specific list on how you're going to achieve that goal. Throughout the process, make sure you monitor, so check your understanding, see how you're progressing, whether this can be, how many Ankis you're getting wrong, how you're going in mini quizzes, or how you're going in your exams. And then finally, an evaluation. So, do a practice exam, see how you're going, have you learned the right stuff, are you on the correct track to success? And the last of the 3 sets of strategies would be the effective strategies. And that's really focusing on yourself, so a bit of a zoomed in approach. I think the one thing that many people really struggle with is motivation. So try and develop a bit of motivation and keep that up. You can talk to your mates, set your goals, aim for your goals, but most importantly, focus on intrinsic motivation. If you yourself don't really want to get somewhere, if the motivation is coming externally, say from parents or so, it's much more difficult to reach those goals. And of course, emotional regulation. The further you progress through your learning career, the more stress you're under, the more time pressure you have, and it's really important not to burn out. So make sure you look at yourself and see, are you becoming overstressed? Are you having a mental breakdown? And if so, take a bit of a step back and a bit of a break. Okay, before we jump into my approach, I guess you guys have all sort of heard of the different learning strategies, and we'll just quickly go through them so we can explore how I've used them in different ways. So of course we have our visual learners, and the great recommendations for these kind of people are, via diagrams, making videos or watching animations. We have the auditory learners, which are, lectures are really oriented towards, but we also have podcasts, which I found really helpful and have, only discovered over the past sort of year. And we have, I guess, the kinesthetic learners, which in biomedical science is much harder to employ. But identifying what kind of learner you are is the first step. Then you've got to set your learning goals, schedule your study time, pick a specific time during the day that you're going to sit down and study, and identify your priorities in that. So, things in life are going to come up, and you've got to decide, what is more important for you to go through with. We'll go through a few different resources and how to plan for regular review. And of course, you've got to minimize distractions to yourself, which sort of lies in with your planning and prioritization. Okay, so now to the bulk of what I wanted to discuss with you guys, and this is my approach. So over the years, I've done many different approaches. I started off with handwritten notes. I progressed to iPad digital notes. I progressed to typing out everything the lecture said. I annotated lecture slides, and I've done everything essentially on the book. And this is what I've found over the 5 years that has worked best for me, is the most time efficient and results in the highest retention, at least for myself. So again, I would recommend that you guys try whatever works for you, try different techniques. Don't remain loyal to what I say or what your friends are doing. Try them out and see what works. Okay, so my approach is essentially centered around the idea that we want to handle this information that is delivered to us via predominantly our lectures in as many ways as possible, in as many different formats as possible. Yet we don't want to make it too repetitive. So the ways I sort of employ this is by starting to write questions during the lectures. So as you're watching the lectures, you're paying attention, you're absorbing the information and understanding what the expert in front of you is explaining, and you can jot down questions as you go. I'll show you a software in a second that I use for that, but when you're writing your questions, it's ideal to keep them nice and short, and you can range between short and broad to short and a bit more specific. And I'll go through a bit how I categorize them. You can then either answer the questions during the lecture if you feel you have the time to, and it won't detract from your understanding, or what's more ideal is to go back after the lecture and then answer those questions as your second review. So I'll go through the software that I use, and I've included a little snippet here, and it's Notion. So I'm not sure if many of you guys have heard of Notion. It's essentially an advanced kind of Word format. All I really use is I make pages and I make toggles. So you have these little toggles here. You can click the drop-down menu, and then underneath you can write your answer. So for example, the epidemiology of this condition, underneath I answer the question in the drop-down toggle, either during the lecture or after the lecture. And I'll show you guys at the end. I think the execs wanted me to do a quick demo of that. So now we've reviewed the information, we've critically made some questions that have forced us to revise, and then we've gone back and we've answered that question based on our memory and supplemented it with the actual lecture slides. And here's, just more of an example of a more basic question style. Here is a bit of an example of how I structure my Notion. You can't really see it, but I've gone for more of a systems approach. I think for undergrad, what I would recommend is definitely structured by subject. So if you're doing, Biome 3002, you can make that its own page, and then in sub-pages, you can make the different topics. So going through a cardio module, going through a rest module, and keeping like information with like information so that your brain can create a bit of a catalog as you go through. All right, so the next step is spaced repetition. So I'm sure many of you guys have heard of this, but I guess more for the first years and the earlier biomedical students. It's this concept of studying where that each time you review a topic, you begin to forget on a gradual curve. Then when you review the topic again, by the second peak, your forgetting curve has a lesser gradient. So you forget less as time goes on, and then you review again, and again it flattens out with each time. So based on that, the more reviews we do, the better we understand the topic. The spaced part of the spaced repetition is the idea that in between these reviews, you don't need you've got a longer time period. So day 0 can then go to day 1, can then go to day 3, can then go to week 2. So you don't need to spend as much time going through the topic each day. Instead, it spaces apart a little bit. And of course, everyone sort of knows where this leads to. Anki. Anki is a fantastic software. If you actually talk to a lot of learning advisors, they will recommend against it. A lot of the learning advisors really dislike Anki and will have lectures on how it's the worst software. I personally have found it amazing, and it's worked great for me. So again, see what works for you guys. Here's a bit of research. I'm not going to go through it, but Anki is definitely proven in especially medical students. So it is a spaced repetition software, and it has algorithms which will automatically set out your flashcards at different intervals so that you automatically follow an algorithm like this. There are, for those who already have Anki, there are things called add-ons, which I'm sure you guys know about. You can go down a big rabbit hole with add-ons. The only ones I personally would recommend as essential is, say, the heat map. That's essentially a coloured in square each time you revise, and it's really helpful to keep your motivation up because you don't want to miss a day of revision because then you lose your streak. So, a bit of motivation there. But there are other, add-ons that you can use, such as the Pokemon add-on, where you build a Pokemon the more cards you do. Or, you've got to keep your pet alive by doing cards every day. In terms of Anki settings, you can change the settings. Straight away when you download it, it will have that spaced repetition layout. I personally have changed my Anki settings so that I review the cards less often. Instead, the gaps are much longer, as I found, doing the card again in 20 minutes and then in 2 days and then in, a week is way too soon, especially with, the amount of content I'm getting at the moment. So I've spaced it apart a bit more. Another thing I did change on Anki was I set the limit in which I see cards to be a month. So if I review a card and I know it really well, I'll see it at least every month, so I won't forget about it, because I find after a month I sort of forget everything. All right, so we've gone through Notion, writing and answering questions, and we've gone through Anki, the spaced repetition, and the missing link. How do we combine this Notion question writing and answering to Anki's, where we do our reviews every so often? And it comes to this amazing website that some American medical student has designed called Notion to Anki. So it's a great software, and essentially you can export a Notion page and it'll automatically turn those toggles into Anki cards. So as we saw before on these, all the front of the cards, that'll be the front of the toggle. So complications will be the front of the card, and then the answer in the toggle beneath will be the answer on the Anki card. So yeah, this is a free software. The way to use it, you just click on the 3 dots on the top of Notion, you click export, and then you upload it to Notion to Anki, and you get an Anki cards deck in a matter of minutes. This leads us, I guess, to when you write your Notion questions, be mindful that eventually you will be reviewing these as Anki cards. So make sure that they're not too long. I personally have a habit of making my Notion cards, really, really long with long answers, and that's not really ideal for Anki. Anki, you want short, sharp answers. One way around that, if you are like me and do like a bit of a longer Anki card, is when you sit down and you do your Ankis, instead of just mentally thinking of the answer and flipping and revealing the card, write out the answer on a notebook and then reveal the card. Because you still want to work out that active recall. You don't want to just flip the card and say, oh yeah, I know that. when in reality you probably couldn't have recalled that from your own memory. So that, I guess, brings us sort of towards the end of the presentation, and then I'll show you a quick example. Most importantly, when you are using Anki, make sure you stay up on top of your reviews. The whole idea of spaced repetition is the algorithm knows when you should review it next. And if you miss that day to review it next, then you forget more down that curve and you won't be able to get it back up to 100%. So it's really important that you stick to the Anki algorithm and try and get your cards done, which is sometimes a bit more difficult, especially when you have, hundreds of cards to get through. And also stay on top of the rest of your study. So try not to fall behind lectures, try and still attend your pracs. All of that is really good content. It's also important to try and mix things up, so explain things to your peers, write practice questions, find online pre-made practice questions. It sounds like UQMS has developed some great resources over the years, so make sure you guys use those also. One of the things I like to do as a bit of a review at the end of each module is I love making things into tables. So you can sort of see on the left here, I've got, all the different cancers, and I've put it down into the different subheadings that I need to know. And this is a great way for me personally to review content. One of my friends in undergrad realized this much earlier than I did, and she started in first year. So this is one of her tables from, I think, Biome 3020. And here, again, she's made all the content for the entire course into tables, which really summarizes that information. So I think that's another great way. Again, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff. I've used this for a while. Try not to measure your own success in, how many Anki cards you do or how many hours you spend. I guess this is a bit of an example of, how I've progressed. I started back here in, what would be my first semester of undergrad, so, years ago, and I've progressed through, my whole study career to, be doing a few thousand cards every day, which is a bit extreme for you guys, but you definitely work up from a bit of an easier point. But yeah, this is the exact visualization of it's a marathon, not a race, that you always get told. So, start slow, try and see what works for you, and then once you've figured out what works for you, then you can put all your effort into that and really, I guess, focus on developing your own learning.
I'm going to be talking about using EndNote. So, Derek. I'm a third year studying biomed, one of the UQPMS execs, so thanks for coming, everyone. So I'm going to be talking about EndNote. EndNote's a referencing software. Most of you guys are science students. Reports are our best friend. So referencing is also one of our best friends as well. So why use EndNote? So first off, you never get marked down for writing incorrect citations, and I know friends who have lost marks because they forgot a comma in their references, and yes, somehow they find that out. I used to be the person that hand wrote their references, which is really, really stupid. On UQ they have a guide of how to write APA 7 referencing, but why handwrite it when you can get EndNote to do it for you? So you never get marked down for incorrect citations. You save time referencing, and it's free. So what more is there?
Just a quick question. Is there any inherent problems using the word reference tool?
I've never used it before. So if it works, but I use EndNote. If you guys have used Word before, you can compare it to EndNote, see how that works. But I got introduced to EndNote, so I use it. So how do I use EndNote? So I'm just going to go through from Google all the way to your Word doc how you insert a reference using EndNote. So I've found an article on referencing. So you just search up your article after you found it on UQ Library, and once you click on your reference here, you can press Export RIS, download that. Usually I like to make a folder within my Finder for the citations for that one, but I won't do that for today. So once you've got this, you click, the food pictures are not related to me. Check out our sponsors on the back of our card. So I've imported a reference after opening the file, and basically I just drag it into the folders that I've made for each of my courses. So I've got farm and all the different groups. So make a new group here. get your imported reference and you just chuck it into here. So you can see you've got a lot of information here. Like it basically just saves all your references. So just in case you like close the 50 tabs that you have open on Safari, you'll still have them open. So once you go into Word, you'll have an EndNote tab once you've set it up properly, and you can insert a citation here. So just now I've imported a citation by Pearson, I think. Yes. Here, so I just press insert and it basically puts it in the format that I want. So usually it's APA 7th and it basically just does it automatically. So no more highlighting your sentence and then commenting and then putting your URL and then getting confused. And it also sorts your bibliography automatically. So as you add your references, it updates it automatically. So once you finish your report, you've actually finished your report. There's no, oh no, now I need to do referencing, which I've done and then spent an hour on. So that's how you use EndNote. So disadvantages, why would I not use EndNote? There is no reason why I would not use EndNote. If someone can think of a reason why I shouldn't use EndNote, please tell me. Yes, Jack, please.
I've found, at least in one case, it could scramble up your formatting and sometimes give you exact right referencing. How do I deal with that?
Yeah, so if it's the wrong order, there's a button that's update citations and bibliography, so it refreshes everything and makes sure that the order should be correct. But I guess you should check it anyway. Yes? You guys aren't helping me.
My assignment has a really weird style of referencing that I've never heard of, like Vancouver.
Oh, Vancouver. Well, you can change your referencing style here to Vancouver. Does anyone else have any other questions? Reasons why I shouldn't use EndNote? Yes?
Out of curiosity, is this free? Or you have to pay?
Yes, it's free. So getting EndNote. Yeah, so as UQ students, you can get it for free at the library. Download EndNote 20. Yeah. Thank you.
So what is STAT about? In STAT, you learn about a bunch of statistical tests that real researchers use, such as one-way ANOVAs, two-way ANOVAs, t-tests, and a bunch more. And most importantly, you learn how to perform them using RStudio code. You also do some easy assignments on the way. Just a disclaimer, I think they're easy, and that doesn't mean that you will think they're easy. What I found really positive about this course was that the statistical tests you learn, you'll actually see in research. Like, I used to read the research, and I was like, oh, what's an ANOVA? And now I know. And that's really interesting. The final is multiple choice. You don't need to attend lectures if you don't want to, because at least when I did it, all the content was on LearnX. And similarly with tutorials, I didn't find them really necessary. But the negatives were that the content was really boring. Yeah, it was just taught in a really boring way. They taught you all the derivations of formulas, which you don't really need. And the code isn't really shown explicitly, so you have to dig for them. So for the first assessment, the paper review, I'd say make sure to find a good group of friends to work on it with. That'll really help. There's a section on ethics, so make sure you actually study the ethics module before, and when you do write it, use sort of the arguments that they teach you, because that will be the best way to get marks. And when you choose a paper, don't choose an overly complicated one. You might want to put a lot of effort into doing this task, but really all you're doing is just looking at a p-value, so don't make your life harder. For the next assessment, it's a research report where you collect data from the islanders. The islanders sleep at night, so don't be like some of my friends and do your assignment on the night before and you can't collect any data because they're asleep. Make sure you do it during the day. Data collection actually takes time. Like, it might take 15 minutes to collect like oxytocin or something. So split data collection amongst your group so it doesn't take hours. The final exam is a multiple choice question, and it's online, and it requires you to answer a couple of questions on content, as well as mostly just using RStudio to apply code. It's really good to get a RStudio code sheet that you get from the lectures, or see if you can get one from an older year. Oh. Yes, question?
Could you give us some more context on collecting data of islanders?
Okay. Henry said we'll do Q&As later, so save your question.
I'll try and keep it brief because it's Sci 1000 and it's not that deep, honestly. So this is, I think, a really easy course, hopefully for you, compared to like Bio 1020. So it's well structured and you don't have to go beyond the syllabus, right? Just do whatever they teach you. And I put down hate philosophy. I think many people agree with me. But if you like it, that's great. Now, some tips. For the workshops, most of us just attended 10 workshops, right? Because you only need 10 marks, right? So if you want to go to the other two, then feel free, but there's no point. And Python, just follow the instructions, right? And if you don't understand the code, please attend the contacts, right? They're very useful, and you can always just search it up as well. But don't try and use code that they don't teach you, right? You will lose marks. So make sure you don't make that mistake. And for your philosophy, I know that you just got it released. Choose a side, right? Don't be on the fence. Just pick a side, right? If they say deductive or inductive reasoning, just say deductive, right? Don't try and be fancy about it. And just use all the information from the lecture slides and you'll be fine. And for the exam, last year we could take it home and it was a 12-hour exam, but you guys have to do it in 2 hours this time. Just do the practice exams, right? Honestly, they just copy all the questions from the practice exams and you'll be fine. It'll be very easy. Okay, good luck. That's it.
Hi everyone, my name is Vivian and I'll be giving you guys all a quick review of Bio 1020, largely from the perspective of the cohort that sat it last year. It'll be a combination of objective information, testimonies from the 2023 course guide that we released earlier this year, as well as some of my own personal experiences with the course. So as a disclaimer, I was someone who only switched into this course around week 4, so this time last year. And so if anyone was interested in looking to switch in or out of a course around this time, census date is on March 31st, so you still do have time, and let this be your sign to back yourself and do that if you're interested in it. So breaking down Bio 1020, it was largely 3 main themes or modules seen up here, and it was definitely a very introductory biology course that covers quite a broad range of foundational topics quite briefly, and sets you up for a good foundation for genetics, molecular biology, for higher level courses in your biomed degree. So these are the 4 main assessment types that contribute to a weighting towards your final grade. In terms of the 2 LearnX and practicals, these are weighted the least, but I would highly recommend just paying attention to those ones because they do give you a lot of free marks if you put in like a little bit of effort. For the LearnX and practicals, I would say that it's really useful for you to implement some sort of calendar system like Google Calendar or an academic journal if you aren't already, just to make sure that you aren't accidentally forgetting to do your weekly tasks, which do add up in terms of marks. The mini test is kind of like a mock run of the end of semester exam just for each module. So I would recommend getting together with some friends and discussing or going over the deep thought questions that your course coordinator provides with you because they can be very high yield for both the mini tests as well as the EOS exam. Some personal likes and dislikes. I really like the pracs because they directly incorporated some of the theory that you've learnt in practice, as well as developing really basic lab skills that you'll be using later in your degree. It is an extension of high school bio, but also very accessible towards for people who didn't take it in high school, and there are some opportunities to build up marks. However, because it is such a large cohort, learning in tutorials and practicals can be a little bit impersonal, so I would highly recommend coming prepared with some questions if you have any. Yeah, another thing that I would like to mention, UQ Attic is a student-run Google Drive that has student collaborated answers to past papers, which can be a pretty useful resource just to get you started in terms of seeing how past students answered questions in past papers. Yep, so just a summary. It is a very beginner-friendly course that sets you up for higher level courses, and tutors do have a wealth of knowledge, so definitely ask them questions if you have any. Yep, that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, so hey guys, so as I don't know if I've introduced myself, so I'm actually Henry, so I'm a second year this year, so I'll be doing my presentation on Chem 1100. So things that were great, so it's basically like a recap of high school. There's a lot of free participation marks, as you'd see, and unlike biology, there's not a lot of memorization needed. Things that weren't so great are like some of the stuff that people do, like the content. It can be quite deceptively hard, because you think you did it in high school, but it's actually like a step above. Pre-lab flowcharts were pretty skull emoji because the pre-lab flowcharts, they took a bunch of time, worth 1% or something like that, or something really small. And then watching everyone get their mid-sem results back was really depressing. It killed my soul because everyone's mid-sem results were not that great. So general advice, it's like chemistry, high school chemistry. So hands up, who took chemistry in high school? I think that should be the prerequisite. Yeah, so you guys should be set. You guys have a solid foundation to build upon. And so basically Chem 1100 is mostly just formulas, so the more you practice, the better you get. Sometimes the lecturers will give you a massive formula and try to explain some stuff, but don't worry too much about that if they give you a massive formula. Just try to understand what they're trying to get at, the point they're trying to get at, but if you don't really understand what's happening, it's all good. But it's just that you're not going to use those formulas if they're really massive. And as always, do questions during the lectures and stay on top of the content. So we're going to go through the 3 marks, your Achieve quizzes and Padlet. So Achieve quizzes, it's basically you access it through a website and you need to know some content to do that, but you get hints along the way if you get questions wrong, so it's not a biggie. And sometimes you have to also do a Padlet submission. So Padlet submission is you just draw some electrons, paste it online, and you should be good to go. Just make sure you follow submission instructions, because I actually didn't submit it correctly the first time and I didn't actually get the mark for it. So please read the instructions carefully. Okay, so onto some pracs. Do your post-lab quiz during this prac session, because I have some friends who forgot to submit it. Because you get 24 hours to submit it and some friends forgot to submit it. And make sure with longer questions in the post-lab, make sure to put some more time into it. And for pre-lab flowchart, just basically copy the manual but put it into your own words to show that you truly understand it. And with the report, make sure you check what referencing style you have to use. And for the prac where you actually have to use it for your report, write the report, make sure you're really switched on and so you collect data correctly. And you also get lots of marks from your report from doing calculations, so that accounts for 30% of your final report. And so just basically, if your experimental value is really close to your theoretical one, you should be on the right track. That's a good way to check. And you can also check with your lab partner as well. And of course, always check with your tutor. They're really friendly and they would be happy to read over your report or just give you some advice. And so not so 3 marks, we're prepping for the end of semester and the mid-sem. So my thoughts on the mid-sem was that it was super time pressured. And the reason why I felt like we generally did quite poorly was a lot of us got a bit complacent, and also the past papers weren't really a good representation of the mid-sem, because the past papers are really easy, but when we actually got to the mid-sem, it was really time pressured. And the MCQ questions weren't that obvious, lots of trips and traps to try to get you. So how do I prep for the end of semester and mid-sem? So particularly for end of semester, definitely create your own formula sheet. Sometimes they don't include equations from that you might use, so definitely create your own formula sheet. And also a really important thing I want you to know is if you ever do questions and you get it wrong, remember to star it and then put it in a separate maybe OneNote section, and make sure you categorize them so that you know what you're getting wrong, and also write a reason why you got that particular question wrong, so you don't make the same mistake twice. This really helps you to differentiate between different topics, and it would really just help you in the long run as well, just getting that organization there. And study smarter, not harder. Check what topics are assessed, but for us last year it was only topics 3 to 8, so we just skipped 1 to 2. That's before the mid-sem. So that just makes your life a bit easier. And just do practice questions. You can access them through UQ Library and do those efficiently, and remember to mark them with your friends. Okay, so we've got some time for Q&A. Anyone want to quickly ask any questions or anything you're not too sure about that you want to ask? Okay, that should be all good then. So we'll just move on to second year courses. So I'm sure, please welcome Ali. He's going to do Bio 2200.
Thank you. So my presentation, I'm going to talk a bit about the course, and I have some images on the side of my content, and I'm going to try and, I guess it's a bit interactive, so you can ask, or I'll ask you guys how this image relates to the course, and you guys can maybe just put your hand up and we'll see. And then also in the second half, I'll talk a bit about Anki. I actually didn't do biology in high school, so I came in and I had no idea what I was doing. I couldn't tell the difference between DNA or RNA, so Anki really saved my life, I think. I owe a lot to it. So yeah, you just learn everything about the cell in 2200, and it's a great course for like research techniques. So if you're into that, then you definitely like this course. And the lecturers are experts in their field, so if you like research into what that lecturer is teaching, you'll actually find a lot of them have written some really cool papers and stuff, and they're really the leaders in their fields. Also, on a more serious note, if you're in second year and you're in biomed and you're not doing this course, please enroll in it because you have to do it. So it's a mandatory course, and everyone in biomed, or if you're majoring in biomed, has to do it. So yeah, I had that picture of Walter White actually, because you'll be like that in the pracs. You'll feel like that. It's really cool, but it's with like plasmids and stuff, and not what Walter White deals with. So, so what I liked it was exam heavy because I could just put everything into Anki and then cram. So not cram, but like study every single day. So my Anki, I try and go every single day, and I try not to miss a day. Like Aaron was saying, I have that heat map, and I pretty much like since year 1, semester 2, I've done Anki every single day for the semester. So I try my best not to miss Anki. I do it on the bus. I do it in the car with my parents. I'm a big advocate for Anki. But the thing is that it doesn't work for everyone. So like I said, this is just my opinion. See what works for you. The practicals were fun because I had a lot of my mates in them. But the content, again, was a little dry because I'm not the biggest fan of cell biology. Again, lecturers were great. So I have a picture of Luka Doncic because Bostian is actually from Slovenia or Serbia. And he is like, well, I mean, Luka's not league leader in points anymore, but that's because of Joel Embiid, you know. But yeah, like he's a really great lecturer, and I really enjoy his content. And the last module is actually really great because it has a little bit of clinical overlap. So GPCRs and kinase receptors are important if you're doing pharmacology. It was really well organized. I think the bio courses tend to be better organized than biome courses. And yeah, they just told you what was assessed, unlike other courses. So they were really clear on what was assessed and what wasn't. So I have a picture of sushi because I don't really like seaweed that much, so I don't eat sushi much. But once I get past the outer like seaweed, I actually really like sushi. So once I realized that the cell biology stuff was not that interesting, the course was like good, if that makes sense. So like I didn't really like cell cycles, but I just pushed my way through it, and that last module was really cool. So with this course, like you have to do it, but try and take the positives out of it, and you'll have a good time. Yeah, we had an online mid-sem, and I don't like ProctorU. There's a lot of reasons behind that, but the kind of positive is that it forces you to memorize heaps of stuff that you don't like. And I say that's a positive because you'll do that throughout your undergraduate, I think. Especially in second year, there's a lot of stuff that's not the most interesting, but you just have to know it. So if you get used to it now, you're just helping yourself later on. So, anybody know who those 4 lovely men are? Yeah, Patrick.
BTS.
I wish. I guess I'm a bit of a boomer, but that's Pink Floyd, and I say that because like when my dad introduced me to them, it was kind of like, okay, what the hell is this? This is like old people music. But once you look at it from a top-down kind of idea, you realize that everything kind of fits together in one big concept, and that's what 2200 is, right? Every single lecture fits into the modules quite well, and it's just one big concept of the whole idea of the cell. So yeah, you know, that's what I thought of my experience. The slides are enough. I didn't need a textbook for this subject. And Anki is really good as well. Also, understand it, like make sure you know the SAQs, like the pathways, because that's often in short answer questions. So if you have a really good grasp of the cellular pathways, you'll do well in the short answers. And then there's also some molecule names that get confusing. So there's like the RAB protein and the RAG protein, and they all kind of sound the same. So that's where Anki comes in helpful, where you can memorize just those molecular names. This is Ronnie Coleman. If you want to do well in this course, do a little bit each day. He says that everyone wants to be a bodybuilder, but nobody wants to lift heavy weights. So if you want to do well in this course, you're going to have to study a decent amount. I study a decent amount every single day. And it's like, yeah, so I think Anki was really good for me because I did a little bit every single day, and I kind of built up on that. And if with the exams on SWOT-VAC, I just put everything in custom study. So that's a feature on Anki where you can just kind of cram. And I was cramming quite a bit, but I think that helped me, especially with the molecular names, because like I said, they kind of all mesh together in one because they all sound the same. So also, I'll show you later, but I had a Word doc where I would just type every single pathway out over and over again. This is Ryan Gosling from Blade Runner 2049, because if you fall behind, you'll be like him. And also because, like, I don't know if you've seen the movie, but the modules interlink, and it's about cells, so it's like cells interlinked. I'm sorry. Yeah. No, but yeah, just try not to fall behind. This goes for everything in second year, because yeah, like the modules, they interlink. And go into pracs with a good idea of what you're actually going to do. That'll help you do well on the quizzes, because you have 10% quizzes for pracs, 20% mid-sem, and 60% final. And yeah, it's especially easy to devote less time to 2200 because 2020 and 2011 are so clinically relevant and interesting, but just try not to fall behind, I think, is the best advice I can give. That's Ice Spice. I'm a munch for Anki, I think. And those are some of the musicians I listen to while I study. I really like instrumental progressive metal and instrumental hip hop, so I don't know, I just thought I would put that up. This is my study flowchart, so watch the lecture. Aaron said, try and write questions during the lecture. I tried that, didn't work for me, because I could not understand what was going on. So I just sit there and I try and understand as much as I can. Sometimes I'll have to go over it again and again because it's kind of difficult. But yeah, watch the lecture. Then I have my lecture slides with my notes alongside Anki, and I just put everything into Anki. Also, I add some other stuff to Anki, so if I'm a little bit lost, I will find stuff from other textbooks online, websites online, diagrams online. When you're doing Anki, it's easy to just spam through it, but go nice and slow and try and understand the concepts. And then reflect, make sure that you're, doing the right thing, learning the right thing. Add more cards, and then, yeah. End of sem, I really recommend a big summary document that you type out every single day. So again, it's spaced repetition, but you're also it's one thing remembering stuff, but it's another thing writing it out. So that's what I would say, like a summary document is really good. So these are my lecture notes. Another good thing is with processes, I like to think of it as a story, right? So old mate, GPCR has, they're like three mates, and then one mate finds another mate, and the other guy, the G alpha protein is not that good mates with the ligand. So G alpha kind of heads all the way down, sees his other mate, oh mate, how are you? And then, yeah. That's how they're all little friends in a cell, and the cell's like a party, and then you just brought along, and you can't get along with that guy, so you move to the other friend group, but you don't really get along with them that well, so you phosphorylate your way back. And I mean, dude, honestly, I walked into Bio 1020 with it was so hard. I didn't come from a biology background in high school, so this is how I remember stuff. They're all mates, and they don't really get along with each other that well, and they change shape, and yeah. And my writing's not very good either. So with a process, you will use image occlusion. So that's directly from a slide, and I've image occluded that little bit. So the two ligands are the two receptors are two mates. then they like kind of come together like, oh mate, how are you doing? And then yeah, the whole thing goes like that. And then with the process, like I also blank out. So like signal recognition particle and ribosome, like that stuff makes no sense to me. So I'll just cover that up and try and understand. I know a lot of you guys are like, oh, what the hell is what the hell is this? But UQ is structured pretty well, so you build on your information. So don't be too scared if you don't understand what anything means. Sorry, I'm not very good at public speaking. Yeah, like for me, I found this so weird because like I really loved maths in high school, and everything that was just like a process and critical thinking, and now it's just remembering stuff and regurgitating it. So yeah, but like rise in calcium ions causes calcium ions to bind to what, right? So that's just a word that you need to know. You can't really, you know, for me, it wasn't a critical thinking thing. It was just, I need to know this word. I'll put it into Anki. I'll get it done. So for me, I use the higher level processes. I would blank out little bits and put it all together in one big concept. But with the small things, I would just blank it out. And you can use this for any subject. I did this for 2011 and 2020 as well. And then I had a Word document like COP2 vesicles, vesicle fusion, trafficking, and I would fill that out every single day. Yeah, because I was, again, like I'm not confident in my ability to do well in biology subjects in second year, so I would just fill it out every single day. So that those three at day one, then that's like Tuesday, and that's Wednesday, and yeah, that way it's active recall, but it's a whole process, right? So if when you do Anki, you know, you might skip stuff, but with here, you're really being harsh with yourself. Like, yeah, like in that red bit, it says, like, I didn't remember that bit, so I will have to do it again. So just be really harsh with yourself, because that sort of thing will, you know, you get marked down for that. So these are my Anki settings. Yeah, there's a guy called Zach Hiley on YouTube. He has a perfect video for how to get introduced to Anki. I could sit here for an hour and talk about Anki, but he's probably the best guy to look at, Zach Hiley on YouTube, and it's like how to use Anki. Teaches you how to get add-ons and everything. Yeah, sorry, I think I went a bit over time there. Yeah, best of luck to everyone, I guess, and Ethan.
All right. Hello, everyone. All right, my name's Ethan, and I'm going to be talking about Biome 2011, Integrative Cell and Tissue Biology. So, just really quickly, general overview. This covers a lot of systems such as muscle, endocrine, epithelial, neurosensory, and immunology. It does extend slightly on what was learned in Bio 1040, but the depth and the breadth of the topics are drastically increased. You also have the toe dissection prac, as well as, for most of you, probably your first major university report, as well as this being a Biome 2012 prerequisite, and for those of you that are doing science and biomed, it is also a UQMD prerequisite subject. So, to start off, we'll talk about the good. First off, practicals are pretty interesting and fun. Like I said before, you're doing the frog dissection, so it's sort of your first dissection prac, and you also get a bit of autonomy as well. They give you some freedom to choose between, I think it's 3 different ways you can take your frog dissection prac. Another good is that the end of semester exam had a fair few past paper questions on it, and they also run revision lectures at the end of each module, and some of the lecturers were really nice and said, you know, the SAQ will be one of these questions. So that it made it so much easier to study. On top of that, the topic quizzes for each module are also not too difficult. And then another good thing is that the sheer amount that you learn, which you learn a lot, but the sheer amount that you learn will be a really useful foundation in subjects further along in your degree. So for second semester, year 2, up until year 3, and it's also pretty clinically relevant as well. The bad. So some of the lecture topics, for me at least, I found quite boring. As well as confusing, specifically sensory. Some may have found this interesting for third years out there, but I did not. I found it boring, and I've not had to do it again as of now. the report as well was a really big step up from what I have experienced previously, and it took a lot of time, way more time than I thought it would take. And with Bio 2200 and Biome 2020, it was a lot to get done. And then some lecturers also just fly through content at the speed of light, requiring you to go back through the lecture and after you are sitting in it, because you haven't taken the notes, because they're going so quick. And like I said, with Bio 2200 and Biome 2020, this is time that you don't really have. So that's not great. And the ugly, I've said it a few times, but studying for Biome 2020, Bio 2200, and this subject at the same time is probably unlike anything I had done before, and to this day is still unlike anything I've done before. It's crazy. Yeah, it's a lot. So because of that, I'm going to try to give you some tips on how to survive and thrive in this course. Disclaimer, it's subjective. This is what I used. Like everybody said before, it's different for everybody. But try to do your best to stay up to date and have some sort of understanding of the content each week. Try your best not to miss a lecture because, as I said, it's time that you can't really make back with the other subjects that you're doing. So one method that I used to sort of make sure I had a general understanding, sort of what Aaron was saying, but a bit different, a bit more broad, was I would take the learning objectives at the start, I'd just turn them into questions. So this is from the epithelium module. Each lecture he'd have some learning objectives, and I'd just make sure at the end of the lecture or at the end of the week I would be able to answer the learning objectives. If they weren't in a question, you just turn them into a question. So, what are the specializations of the epidermal cells and how are they related to functions? If I could list them all, great. I've got a general understanding of it. And then that's sort of the depth I took until SWOT-VAC, when then I would just cram. So your prac reports were hard, and a lot of myself and a lot of my friends probably didn't do as well as we had hoped in this. And a reason I sort of look back and identify is that I didn't ask the tutors enough questions. They are there to help, and the report is pretty ambiguous with what they want you to present. Yep, they're there for you. Don't just run out early. Ask the questions. Even if they're dumb, there's no dumb questions. So ask. Again, just come to the pracs prepared. Make sure you've spent the extra time looking at the prac designs, because you don't want to waste that time whilst you're in there sort of going back over the notes and which ones you want to choose. And then going on from that, start the report early. It is large and it is overwhelming, and you will be using 15 to 20 plus references. So there's a lot of literature that you need to do, so start it early. When it comes to the exams, past paper, questions and revision lectures are pretty clutch. So use this as the bulk of your study close to the exam, as it will be a high yield method with all the other subjects you have. A lot of content between the three subjects, not a lot of time, so I found this was easy. Try not to neglect the finer details, as some pretty specific MCQs may come up, but sometimes you just got to cut your losses. And then additional study tips, not too much here, but Anki, up to you. I didn't really find it useful for me, as a lot of them were just really big 10-mark chunk questions, SAQs that I was struggling with, and I just didn't find that helpful to chuck that into an Anki card. Whereas Notion, just exactly what Aaron said, questions, toggle, you get it. So pretty much, again, try your best to take in the content whilst you're in the lecture, make the most out of the lecture, because you don't have the time really to go back. And appreciate what you're learning, because it is really quite cool when you think about it. All right, good luck.
Hi guys, I'm Angeline. I'm going to try to keep this short. I know we're running a bit over time.
So for anatomy, it's basically, I think of it into 3 different sections. So at the start, you'll learn about some bones. You'll probably start to learn about skulls and all that. So you basically just need to learn some of the characteristics, some of the functions of the bones and where they're located in the body. And then after you learn about those, you start to move into some of the muscles, okay? So here you need to know the function, like why you use the muscles and how you use them. You're going to need to know origins and insertions. Now these are like really content heavy because like you have so much muscles in your body. So this course is sort of just memorizing, like try your best to memorize everything. And then from there, you're going to go into the different organs. So here you're going to learn about sort of like the characteristics again, especially arteries and veins and its innervation. And also obviously you need to know where it's located in the body. Alright, so you have 3 main assessments with this course. So you have quizzes and they're like every week. So with these, you can try the quizzes over and over again and you can keep trying till you get full marks, which is 12. So I'd really recommend you, if you get 11, keep going till you get 12 because those little marks, they can be like key to getting you a 7 in the end. So mid-sem and end of sem, they'll include spotters. So with my year, our spotters were on paper, but I believe this year you guys are doing it in the gaff. So with this, it's just going to be like a piece of specimen in front of you and they're going to be pointers and you'll have to identify what the pointer is pointing at. So you basically need to know where things are in the body and stuff like that. So for end of exam, you'll have your theory exam. So these are basically stuff that they won't basically test you in the spotter. So it's more about like the functions and stuff like that. Right. So things I loved about this course. So this course moves a lot away from other courses. It's like different content. So like with 2011 and 2200, you're learning about all the cell type stuff. And from this, it's a bit different. So you're learning about the macroscopic things in your body. Also, an opportunity you get at UQ is to get to go in the gaff, which you don't get to experience in a lot of other unis. So this is one aspect that I really love the most. So in the gaff, you're going to get to work in groups and you're going to get to look through some of the specimens and your groups can change every week. So don't panic, like you get to make new friends and all that. One tip I would suggest with the gaff is there's not a lot of tutors floating around and with them I would go into the prac already prepared some of the knowledge like what Aaron was saying and then ask the tutors to consolidate your knowledge. So don't ask them about everything because they're not going to have a lot of time to just spend in your group because there's not a lot of them. At the end, Salim, so he teaches all of the organ stuff and I thought he was like the most interesting lecturer. Some of you will agree with me here. And like his content was just so much more interesting. He makes jokes and it was just not as dry as any of the other lectures. Alright, some of the things I hated. So I did this with 2011 and 2200, which most of you would be doing. And it's just a lot of time you need to spend on this course because you just need to memorize everything and literally like everything that they teach you. And it's just really hard. And then, so the tutor student ratio, I already talked about that. And another thing I found was that especially in the myology lectures, in the muscles, they expect you to memorize all the origins and insertions, but sometimes the lecturer does not include everything you need to know in the slide. So with this, I would suggest going into your textbook. There's a great table in the textbook that lists everything out. So I would go from there to make your study notes. So other tips, so with all the things you need to remember, there's a lot of great acronyms you can find online. So for example, like the nerves in your brain and all that. So YouTube will be your good friend here. Anki and flashcards, they'll help you remember everything. I'm going to go through that in a sec. So yeah, so this is something you might need to know. So on the right side here, that's just a bone and like some of the features that you'll need to know. As I said, it is really content heavy. You literally need to know every single characteristics there is to know about bones, muscles, organs, and stuff like that. So as I said with the textbook, so I just kind of like use a textbook to help me with like making tables. So this is some of the ways I did that.
with Anki. So this is not my own Anki deck. So thanks to someone from the grade above us that gave us this. So you can like exclude, like Aaron said, and then like for example in this deck, you need to answer what the red box is. So this would be like the front of the card, and if you just flip to the answer, it'll tell you what it is. So Anki is really helpful in this course. Alright, lastly, I would suggest using these two, which your lecturers probably would have told you as well. So real anatomy, you get to basically see what a real specimen would look like, which you won't get to see that in a textbook. So real anatomy would be your really good friend here. And on the left here, this is complete anatomy, which you can like sort of like rotate the images to see different sides. So that's really helpful too. I think that's all for me. Are you doing Q&A?
Please make this fast, right?
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna have to wrap through this because I think I tried a little bit too hard. So, yeah. Disclaimer, sorry, this is probably going to be a bit more directed to third years, maybe the second years, not really the first years, but that's okay. All right, it's basically Biome 2020, but harder, but you get to dissect, so that's the key part. Okay, I'm zoomed through this. The course coordinator is pretty good, it's pretty organised. The pracs I really enjoyed, which is the key part of this course. So you get to do a dissection. So I think this course is actually one of the only courses in Queensland, maybe Australia, no, I'm not too sure, that you actually get to dissect a cadaver. So if you enjoyed 2020 or you want to learn more about human body, I highly suggest you take this opportunity. And the tutors are super helpful, like Aaron, who came in the beginning, he was a tutor. Weekly spotter, for this year I read the ECP, they're not assessed for you guys, lucky for you, you guys get a report or something. But nonetheless, you should be taking this opportunity to revise weekly. So because your final exam is a spotter after all, right? So you will need to do that. I'll tell you how to study for this spotter later. It's in-depth, could be Stockholm Syndrome, I don't know. Pathology was really well taught, so if you want to think about like what subject you should study for, definitely pathology. It's basically 3 marks if you learn it. Exposure, so week 5 in med is when we actually started med science, and my trauma was alleviated because I did this course, even though I don't actually retain much of it. So if you want exposure, do this course. Embryology, I don't know, it was kind of weirdly taught, went in circles. Histology, everything literally looks the same to me, but I guess you just have to learn. If you're colourblind, that is a disadvantage, so maybe you learn that now. In terms of time, really big time eater. So I personally didn't do this with 4 courses because I did 3 summer semesters, but if you do 4 courses, I commend you because I am weak, so yeah. It's split in 2, so theory and spotter. So theory, self-explanatory. Spotter, you look at an image, you point at it, what body part is this, what does it do? In terms of spotter, the differences, histo and embryology not really in it, but you should know it, anyways. What am I supposed to know? Pathology, everything Suja says, she will say it so clearly, self-explanatory. General anatomy, you should know all these things. You know what, I will just breeze through this. You can access these slides after. Is there anything else I need to talk about? I guess for radiology, it might look like actually black and white because it is, but the slides are pretty, that's all you need to know. It's literally just the PowerPoint slides that the guy goes through. For some reason, he made the video in portrait mode. Tell me why, I don't know. Examples of general expected knowledge. So for divisions, you need to know artery, vein, sympathetic, parasympathetic innervation, and maybe lymphatics. I don't know about lymphatics. It was kind of a bit low yield in my opinion. So the slides on one of them is Oliver's, so pretty good. This is for lymphatics, so I don't actually remember ever learning it in the course itself. But it was in the final exam, so tell me why. So the way that I learned it was through this really traumatic video. So as you can see, I don't know, I don't really remember this video, but parrots with the kidney beans, so they're para-aortic, I don't know, watch the video. Anki, again, as Aaron said, if it works for you, works for you. So personally for spotters, I think I made my own with some of my friends, so I found it it was kind of a journey for me doing this course. So I found it helpful to do the spotters first before learning the theory, because I felt that it was more easy to actually visualize where I am looking in the human body. And then I divide the decks by region/system. It's clear with the course because you do it by system. So yeah. And for weekly spotters, although I know they're not assessed, sometimes, I was just not feeling it, so I literally image included his slides, and I did pretty okay. So work smart, not harder, right? Anatomy Atlas, so this one's the one recommended by it. I recommend you do it. So as you can see, I kind of highlighted some stuff. So that's just to identify stuff. Also, fun fact, they are the same images in your SPO exam, so I assume it's still the 70-page final exam that you do, and it's literally the same pictures, except I think they were in colour actually, so that's pretty okay. But yes, I'm not actually kidding when you probably end up learning most of this atlas, except for the brain stuff, but yeah, definitely don't underestimate the power of this. Complete anatomy was talked about. It's paid. Apparently you guys get a free access code. I don't know. But yeah, it's helpful if you don't like Anki and you like visualizations. If you're a visual learner, you get rotate stuff. This was personally vouched by my tutor Tam. So if you like textbooks, this one's probably the one for you. Dissection presentation. So yeah, these are actually assessed. So long story short, actually be prepared, make a plan before you go. You are given your what's not specimens, body parts before to show. So yeah, make a plan. So like for example, I'm pretty sure it's legal for me to talk about this. So I had to do the thoracic duct. So know where that lies. It's in front of your esophagus or something, right? So yeah. Is it? I don't know. I don't remember. But yeah, the tutors aren't supposed to help you. But don't be scared to ask. It's better to ask than not at all, right? Don't be afraid as well. So don't obviously be careful, because I did accidentally cut some structure, but don't do that. But yeah, time is of the essence. I think you only get 3 or 4 pracs to actually dissect your things. Your last one should not be you trying to find a new structure. It should be you just cleaning it up. And yeah, personally learning sound, I'm gonna skip that probably. What I wish I did. Probably just regular. Just do it regularly. If this is probably like the one course where you should be learning things regularly, because it's very content dense. Preparing for EOS. I feel like that's also self-explanatory. Yeah, so one thing I would talk about is visual stuff. So in the SAQ, they will often ask you to draw something. Like I think for my exam, it was like draw the layers of the heart, or one of them was like explain something about the liver, and you should draw that. So yeah. Extra credit. Okay, I'll just skip through this, but this is more so like, I don't know, do it in like the holidays if you're really bored. You can learn medical terminology. There's like a YouTube channel called Chubby Emu about clinical stuff. There's a pathology museum thingy in Hurston. So I had friends that were actual nerds and they went there. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And there's also USLME Step 1. That's for if you're really advanced. I would not recommend this at all right now, but once you finish the course, I would say like have a flick through. Pretty cool. Best of luck. Yay.
Okay, hi guys, don't worry, I'm the last speaker, so you're almost done. Just for a bit of context, can you put your hand up if you're a first year? Alright, well thank you for staying back. Can you put your hand up if you're a second year? And then third years? Oh, okay, it's actually more third years than I expected. Just for a quick intro, I'm Elaine, and I was the president of the Biomedical Society last year. As you know, the president this year is Jack over there. And Momo, who was just speaking just then, was the secretary last year. So it's great to be invited back here and be able to talk to you guys. So I'm talking about integrated endocrinology. If you're in first and second year, you might have no idea what that is. So I'm just going to give a quick summary of what is endocrinology. So one word summary is it's about the hormones in our body, okay? So so this is all the structures you'll learn about, and these are the things that hormones regulate. As you guys will learn about, may already know. And obviously we know that a lot of medical conditions are caused by hormonal imbalances. For example, diabetes. Yeah, so some of the things we learn about
in endocrinology, right? These things are all part of the endocrine system, all affected by hormones. We had things like pregnancy, diabetes, reproduction, and then hormonal control of the cardiorespiratory system, and renal function, which is like the kidneys. So, pros. By the way, if you have any questions, feel free to just ask us after or message any of us later. Obviously, we're all speeding through everything really quickly. But pros endocrinology. I think it's really relevant for med. I don't know, everything you learn, like if you looked at the topics, yeah, that's pretty much, you're gonna repeat everything in med. So I think it's personally a really great subject to do, especially if you want to be prepared for med, you're really set on it, like you know that you're interested in the things like that are taught. Yeah. You learn a bit of histology, which is like this stuff, like where you look at things microscopically. Pathology, which is like what happens when things go wrong, you know, like diseases. And another pro is, I found the practicals really fun. So I don't remember what the first practical was about. Anyway, that was anatomy. The second one though, we got to measure our body composition because it was about like just health, lifestyle, and yeah, exercise. So what we did, all of us by the way, we got to go into this body pod and measure our body fat, our height, weight, all these things that you normally have to pay like $100 for if you want to get them in an actual setting. So for anyone that like is a gym junkie, I thought it was fun to find out my exact body fat percentage because this is like the gold standard apparently. Fun facts. Anyways, so you kind of like strip down and get into the pod, but don't worry about it. Okay, third practical, you do something called histology, which is, yeah, you look at cells and you look at the cellular basis of diseases. If none of this is making sense, don't worry about it. Anyways, I think it was fun. Other pros, it was a very well-structured course, I thought, and it had many great lecturers. And the assessments, to be honest, so minus the test, there were 3 small and simple assignments which were 5% each. For example, one of them was, they give you a scientific article and you have to write like a news article about it. Yeah, whatever. The second one was he gave you another article and he said, oh, make it a poster. I don't want to see any words. I want to see only pictures. So that was mine, and I got full marks. Yay! But yeah, so you get to do little fun things like this, which I thought were kind of interesting. You have to do 2 reports based on practicals. Yeah, whatever. You guys will do plenty of reports. You'll get the gist of it. And there is one end of semester exam, which is worth 50%, which brings me to the cons. So the end of semester exam was extremely hard, as some of you guys may have heard, because there was no mid-semester exam, which means they tested like all 12 weeks in one exam. I don't know why they did that. I wish there was a mid-sem. So that would, to be honest, be my main complaint of this course. Other than that, I really enjoyed it. Obviously, if you're not interested, it will be dry. If you're interested though, it won't be dry, to be honest. There is a focus on research. You'll get a whole module on like, oh, I did this experiment on rats. Now memorize everything about rats. So it can get dry, yeah. And there are some unclear marking criteria, but I feel like that's prevalent across a lot of courses where they just don't really tell you what you need to do exactly and you just kind of have to like figure it out. Tips for endo, yeah, you guys can read this. We have done, lots of people have given you lots of tips about all sorts of study techniques already. I don't need to drill this into your brain too much further. One thing that no one has really mentioned though is I found that mind maps are really cool and really helped me, especially when I was cramming for something like this. So I have an example of a mind map which I had to dig out from like a messenger conversation because I pretty much like burned all my notes the moment this finished. It was quite traumatic, despite. But this is one of the topics we did called asthma and the placenta, and this is the whole like 3 lectures worth of content. So like a whole week and a half or something. I just put it onto one little A5 page. Just the main points, the things I needed to know for the exam. And that was it. Like I feel like if you're cramming, you don't need to know all the random details, pages and pages of notes. Yes, you can flashcard everything, but like sometimes it's just, yeah, you just want to see how everything works together. So if you're like, oh, I hate flashcards, oh, I hate writing notes, mind maps is also another great idea, in my opinion. And yeah, it really helped. All right, so I rushed through that. I'm going to go to pharmacology now. So I noticed that no one here presented on second year pharm, which is BAM 2401. So I'm going to do a quick introduction on what pharmacology is, especially for the first years who may not really understand what this is yet. So one word summary, drugs, all right? So when I say drugs, I'm talking about medications. But
like how they're used, their effects, obviously how they work on our body, right? So yeah, we talk about topics like alcohol ingestion, tobacco, nicotine, marijuana, antidepressants, and exactly how everything works, pretty much. Oh yeah, pros. One of the easier third-year courses because it's open book. So yeah, self-explanatory. There's a second-year farm which I recommend to do before this, and low-key that's harder because it's not open book. More small assessments with less weighting could be a con, up to you and your learning style. And I, to be honest, recommend most people do this course. Firstly, because it's easier. Secondly, because it's MD recommended, because you'll be learning like the exact same lecturer gives the exact same lectures with the exact same lecture slides in med. So you'll basically be Mary Louise, you'll meet her. So you'll basically be relearning everything in med. So let's say you don't do this in undergrad, that's fine too. If you hate pharm, don't do it. You'll have to learn it again though, and maybe in like the span of 2 days or something. Was that pros? Oh yeah, more pros. Drinks and pizza. When I say drinks, I mean you are given alcohol to drink. And no, I'm not joking. In one of the practicals, we measure the effects on alcohol on things like your hand-eye coordination, your reaction time, things like that. So you nominate someone in your group to drink vodka. I think it was 3 standards, measured according to your body weight, with a mixer, like so you don't like die or something. And for legal reasons, they have to provide food after. So it's drinks and pizza. That was the whole practical. And seeing your friends get tipsy. So disclaimer on that pro though. Okay, next pro is it's good for research skills. So you have to do 3 reports, and while that may sound like a lot, they're quite straightforward and quite easy. If you've done a lot of reports already, like through Bio 1040, the other science courses, it's pretty much the same. Just yeah, very repetitive. All right, cons. So for the alcohol practical, you had to make 10 graphs on everything you did. So pros and cons, I guess. You take some, you lose some. And because there are 3 reports to write, let's say I was doing endocrinology, pharmacology, and anatomy, but endocrinology had 2 reports, so altogether I had 5 reports. So it was like a report due every second week. Sometimes reports were due on the same day. Can get really overwhelming. In the end, it's kind of about your time management. And once again, if you start early, it will be okay. But yes, it can. Third year is quite a lot of work, to be honest. Some people may say, oh, third year is easier than second year. But it all depends on what you're doing and how you treat things. For example, I feel like a lot of people find third year easier than second year because they try really hard in second year and they're like, you know what, too much effort. I just want to chill in third year. So they take it chill, and that's why they find it easier. Not necessarily that the courses are actually easier. Open book means you actually have to understand. You can't just Anki everything and hope for the best. It's open book. You have to know what you're learning. Oh, other general tips. So I'm done with my things now, and then we're pretty much wrapping up this up as well. So I had some general tips, which was check the course guide for more info. I'm sure you guys already know about it. I'm sure they've raved to you about it. Choose what interests you. So I think you do well. You do best on courses that you're actually interested in. There is no point choosing something that everyone is like, oh, this is so easy, like easy 7. And you're like, I literally hate pharmacology. I like never want to do it. Don't do it then. You'll figure it out eventually. Don't worry about it. Go to UQPMS events. I attached some photos of me with the current execs. You can see Jack, the president, Anika, the treasurer, and Henry and Derek, who are around the corner as well. Yeah, I had lots of fun in undergrad through going to these events, so I recommend everyone here continue to go. And that's it from me.